Welcome to Ignite Your Confidence for women in leadership who want to speak up and stand out. I'm your host, Karen Laus. Here you'll get all of the tips and tools that you need to stand out with unshakable confidence. Let's dive into today's episode. Well, we have a really fun guest today, everybody, and we have just been laughing about a lot of different things before even getting on this conversation. So, Amy, take it away. Tell us about yourself.
Oh, Karen, thank you so much for having me. Yeah, so I'm delighted to be here. I am an executive leadership coach and I have been doing this for over a decade. And I
Wow.
partner with leaders and with teams on all things growth, transformation, and flow. And a big area of expertise of mine is communication, as you and I have discussed before. And so
Yes.
all things communication is really my happy place, and where I just love to dig in. And the most recent thing that I'm most excited about and been working on the most is really getting my new book out in the world. And so I've recently published my book, which is called Living on Purpose: 5 Deliberate Choices to Realize Fulfillment and Joy. And yeah, so that's really just what has been taking a majority of my time, and it's just been wonderful.
Well, and congratulations. I'm very excited to dive into that. I love what you said. What I just clued into is when you use the word transformation,
Mm.
and that is something I know that's at the core of what you do. Can you give us a specific example of a client that you worked with that you feel like made a great transformation that would illustrate what you do?
Oh, wow. Yeah. Gosh, I've so many, and there's so many ways to kind of capture this because there's so many delightful examples. But I would say, I'm thinking of someone in mind right now. She's an executive, C-suite member. She, you know, by every measure has everything that would classify one as successful and has made it right. And while life looks great on paper, there's still a lot of inner turmoil. There's a lot of I'm not doing enough, I haven't done enough, I am not approaching it right. And so what a real transformation is going on that deep inner journey, outer and inner, but really it's looking at all of the perceptual models that we create for ourselves, the beliefs that we hold, how we make interpretations about what is, and more importantly, the relationship we have with ourselves. And so what what we do is we went on a journey to really look inwards and outwards and upside down and through all the ways in which she made sense of her world, how she came to know herself, how she like what she thought about herself, what she thought was possible, what she, the beliefs she had about how life works, the beliefs that, and it's not like this is some formula or process, like, okay, let's look at this now, let's look at this. It's all done through very organic, nourishing, fabulous conversation that we really make the invisible visible about what that operating system is. And in the course of identifying all the stuff that she didn't know that she didn't know about what she's thinking, what she's saying, what she's doing, we uncover all of the blind spots, the ways in which she's holding herself back from, and here it is. The reason we're working together in the first place is she wants to thrive,
Mm.
knows that there is a way, like I could be feeling so much more free, more fulfilled than the way that I do now. Because the false thinking is, well, it's when we go public, or oh, when we sell the company. Oh, it's when I retire. Oh, it's when and we have this idea that it's when I attain the next big thing or when I do the big accomplishment, then I'll finally be free. And so after a while, you think that enough, you kind of get really disillusioned and somewhat um, not pessimistic, but that feeling of, oh, all
Mm.
right, let's just keep plodding along. But deep down, it's like, I know there's another way of going about this. So a real transformation is unleashing that way of going about it in a totally different way. And so now I would say she is absolutely free of all of the ways in which she held herself back and has reclaimed so much more time and energy in her day because all of that bandwidth that was channeled away and in the unnecessary narratives that
Mm.
we entertain are now released. And so it's really just a matter of creating incredible impact and being present and finding joy and really living life to its fullest.
Wow. I mean, those sound like amazing things that we all want, right? And I'm sure
Right,
we all
totally.
can relate to feeling bogged down. Can you give us a specific tip on how that can happen for people that are listening, that they want to know, okay,
Yeah.
how do I do that? How, beyond the organic conversation, which I totally
Yeah,
understand, but what is something tangible that you could give the audience to do?
totally. This is such a big concept. It's simple in theory, but it's so powerful when you really get what I'm about to say. But we kind of have to take a step back and we look at our lives and we say, okay, I'm up to a lot. I got goals, I got aspirations, I got a vision board. There are things I want to do and things I want to create in the world. Like, that's great, wonderful. But then you have to wonder, well, why? What are you really up? Why are you doing what you're doing? Why do you want what you want? Now, most of us have been conditioned to think that we want what we want because it will ultimately lead to happiness.
Mhm.
And we have these goals and desires because we think it's going to essentially just make us happy. But the truth is, and what nobody really thinks about, is that everything we want, whether it's a thing like a new car, or it's a relationship, or it's an amount of money, everything we want, everything we think we want, it's actually not for the thing. And it's not even really for this, like, oh, because that makes me, what we really want is the feeling we think we would have as a result of the thing. Straight
That's,
up. That's
yeah.
all of us want a feeling. And so unless we bring into awareness what is the desired feeling state, what happens is we start chasing the thing. And that's when we get really good at figuring it out. Right. And so the trick here, to answer your question very succinctly, the very powerful thing we can begin to do is to feel it out. Don't figure it out, because
Ooh, I
figuring it out
like
is
that.
chasing the thing. Yeah.
Feel it out
Yeah. Right.
rather than feel it out rather than figure it out.
Yes.
Love that.
Because figuring it out is chasing the thing, oftentimes forsaking the feeling that we really haven't gotten super clear on. And that's why we end up with the great job on paper, with our life looking good on the outside, but then we feel so hollow on the inside. We're like, oh, what am I missing? Well, it's simply because you've been chasing the thing. You
Mm.
haven't been factoring in, well, what do you want to feel? So what do? We bring that into awareness. Oh, well, this is what I want to feel. Oh, this is what I want to feel. And just bringing that into your scope of awareness, all of a sudden options and possibilities now all of a sudden emerge, and you start to navigate differently. But to feel it out is really to honor, wow, this option feels amazing versus this idea sounds good. Right.
Yeah.
So it's really reaching for the things that make you feel expansive versus constrictive. Yeah.
So would
Yeah.
a fair question be, just to have people have something, hey, write this down right now, explore, like spend 15 minutes this week thinking about why you want to, because I heard you say earlier, like, what is the why? And
Yeah.
then maybe what is the feeling that I want to have? Is that
Yeah.
how it would work?
Oh, absolutely. Well, and you can even just ask yourself right now, like, if you feel yourself longing for something, or if you're up to something, you could just take a step back and you're like, actually, what do I want to feel on a day-to-day basis? What is it just that I want to feel?
That's
And
great.
to get specific, like, I want to feel spacious. I want to feel present. I want to feel nourished. I want to feel impactful. You decide, but just bringing this into awareness is going to start to shift, kind of fine tune your lens that you look through. And all of a sudden, your world starts to look slightly different and opportunities pop up that you wouldn't otherwise see.
I love that. Well, and I'm such a big believer on what you focus on expands. And I think that that's so connected to the part about feeling. So I want to turn it over to you, because you know that my podcast is all about confidence, and that
Yes.
we love hearing women's stories of their
Mm,
journey. And since we've
yeah.
talked about transformation, I would love to hear how you've transformed. And I know that's a huge question. So
Yeah.
thinking about anything that you would like to share with how you felt related to confidence, maybe a long time ago, maybe not that long ago. It just depends on whatever you want to share about, essentially the transformation of when you weren't confident about something
Yep.
to
Yeah.
where you go, wow, I've shifted now.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. There's, I mean, I'm like you and like anyone listening, isn't it true that we have multiple big moments in our life, right? Where like we shift into new ways of being, and it's usually around exactly this, like becoming confident in one way, shape or form. It's funny, I reflecting on this. So as a kid, I was super shy. Oh my gosh. Like
Really?
so shy. My parents, okay, so I hear it now. I'm like a motivational speaker. I run these huge workshops. I have no problem getting in front of people. Like I'm a public speaking coach, in fact. And I know you know that, Karen. And it's
Yeah.
so funny because my parents just laugh at this. They're like, oh my God, you couldn't even ask our server for a napkin at a restaurant, like, and now look at you. It's just it's so
That's
funny.
so
And
cool to know, though. We need
yeah, right.
that. Yes. Yes.
Yeah,
Yeah. So how
so
did that
shy.
shift?
I'm so shy. And there's so much to say about all the transformations I've had in my life. But if I want to just really speak to the heart of what I think
Yeah.
is most important, first part of my life, I was riddled with fear, right? Fear of what people thought, fear of not doing it right, fear of failing, fear of just fear. And that really stemmed from a deep rooted false limiting belief that I wasn't good enough.
Mm.
And really that's what it all came down to. And when I was young, did I have awareness of that? No. But I was very aware of the reality I was feeling, which was one of, like insecurity and just so uncertain and just so, ooh, and I was just afraid, and it was painful to speak up. It was painful to get involved. And it was really quite, I mean, it was, I would say, consuming in its own right, but that was my reality. And,
Mm.
many, many little things had shifted as I grew. One of the big ones was I went from really kind of liking math to becoming obsessed with math. And that shift really happened in high school, like going from middle school into high school. And I became so passionate about math that my focal point changed. And all of a sudden, and so this is where confidence started to come. So
Yeah.
leading up to this point where I was really starting to find my passion, so passionate about math and music. So I'm a pianist as well. So piano and math, I became so
Wow.
voracious over both. And it was really beginning in high school that my focal point shifted from trying to stay safe to really focusing on something outside of myself. And as I really got good, like, and it wasn't like it was an active choice. Let me focus on math more than I'm focusing on staying safe. Let me focus on, it was just that I fell into this passion. And it was simply because my focal point changed that confidence grew. Because
Oh,
as I was
say that
standing
one more time.
yeah, yeah, my focal point changed. And so when I made it not, so when it was inadvertently not making it about me anymore, it was making it about something much bigger than me. Like
Wow.
I took myself out of the equation, not actively. I didn't choose it. It just happened by
Mhm.
taking myself out of the equation and focusing on something so much bigger than me. I had no cognitive bandwidth available to focus on any fears or insecurities. And so I was nothing but effective and immersed in something outside of me. Now with that, that's pristine focus, and with that you now become eloquent, you become clear, you're able to speak up because it's now not about playing it safe anymore. And so that has been a theme, really learning to stand for something much bigger than myself. That is the heart of confidence.
Wow.
Confidence
Oh,
truly
yes.
is right.
I'm like, yes, preach, keep going, keep going. Well, and I have to interject here because I
Please, please.
think that I mean, your book is living on purpose,
Yeah.
and it is so true. For me, things really shifted when I solidified, my mission is to reach 10 million women in the next 10 years to overcome
Mm,
self-doubt and speak with confidence.
mm,
So when I mean, I think for all of us, when we get clear on that, and I love I love the analogy with the math and the piano, because the other thing that's so cool, and you said this in so many words too, but the passion piece. And when I love I remember somebody once shared, um, like the idea of getting lost in time. When you're so
mm,
passionate about something, time just goes and you don't even
Yeah,
realize it's past.
that's
And
right.
I feel like that is so aligned with confidence as well. I'm
Yes.
I'm just saying I 100% agree with you, and I've seen it happen in my life too. The power
Yeah.
of focus
Oh,
has
yeah.
been huge, and knowing that, wow, I'm part of something bigger than myself. And I think about I at one point in my career with my coaching business, I used to ask, in fact, I do not all the time now, but more when I was doing individual coaching, I would ask people 10 questions, one of which to help me get to know them better before we started working together. And one of
Yeah.
the questions was, what is the biggest fear that you have about your life? And the
Mhm.
majority of answers were that I won't make a difference.
Yeah.
And I
Yeah.
really feel like at the heart of that is that I won't matter. Like that would be the
Mhm.
greatest fear if yeah, I'm not seen and heard for who I am. Anyway, I digress,
Yeah.
but it's all connected.
Totally connected. Oh
Yeah.
my
So
gosh.
how has focus helped you in your mission?
Well, oh gosh, there's so much to say about this because kind of going back to something you said around, the loss of time, right? So that's flow. When you can enter into something and there's no cognitive bandwidth channeled on self, right? And so you're
Yeah.
so focused on the thing at hand. And so when I talk about focus, I'm talking about the kind of focus that is chosen, that's harnessed, that's deliberate, that is so focused on the thing. And so if it's helpful, I'll kind of give a framework that I teach.
Please.
It's in my book. It captures exactly what the heart of confidence is. And the way I talk about this is, at every moment in time, like right now, 5 minutes from now, each and every one of us is always standing for something, but we're usually not aware of what we're standing for. It just happens. And it's by the nature of just the way our minds work. So what I mean by that, for example, Karen, so here we are, we're in this conversation. And if I didn't know what I know, I could right now ultimately be standing for impressing you, right? And that could be my ultimate primary objective. Or I could ultimately be standing for, getting the book out in the world and getting book sales, right? And that could be my ultimate primary objective. Or I could be standing for connection and empowerment and possibility, right? And so that's what I'm standing for right now because I'm choosing that. But in every
Love that.
moment, yeah, thank you. Yeah, in every moment, each and every one of us, there is a primary underlying objective that is live, but we're often not aware. So here's another example. Um, let's say you have to give really hard feedback to a colleague that you like. And it's really hard. Now, we've all been in that situation and you're like, oh, I really don't want to give it. And it's hard. Well, the only reason it's hard is because in that moment, you are standing for something that you're not choosing and it's not serving you. And in that moment, you are standing for being liked. You're standing for avoiding conflict. You're standing for playing it safe. You are not standing for their growth.
Wow.
Now, here's the thing, you wouldn't actively choose to stand for being nice over their growth. It just happens. And that's because of the nature and mind. And there's so much to say about this, Karen, and I could deconstruct why that's the case. But what I'll just say is this, a primary stance is going to come and it's just going to happen.
Yeah.
But our job is to be sensitive to how we feel, to kind of tell, oh, am I standing for something that's serving me or not? So why am I sharing this? Well, confidence is a result, not an effect. It's a cause. It's an effect, not a cause.
Yeah.
It's an effect of a stance that serves us. So for example, let's talk about public speaking, because I know you know a lot about it. I know about it. And so a lot of people they're afraid of speaking in public. They hate it, right?
Yeah.
It's like the number one fear. Nervousness is the thing that takes us down. Well, guess what? Nervousness, that's the opposite of confidence. Nervousness is purely an effect. It's a symptom of a stance that you are holding that you didn't mean, and it's not serving you.
That's
It's simply an
powerful.
effect, right? And so if we're nervous, it's simply because in this moment, I am standing for looking good. I am standing for proving myself. I am standing for avoiding judgment. I'm standing for me. Now, with that self stance, that causes nervousness. How do we totally claim confidence right then and there in any moment? You choose the noble stance, because guess what? You're speaking for a reason. And
Yes.
it's not to prove yourself. Is it for urgency? Is it a call to action? Is it empowerment? Is it, I don't know, but there's a reason. But the moment you harness, it's like, whoa, 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 and you own it, like, oh, no, 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 no. I'm standing for connection or whatever it is. You own that focal point, that stance. Here it is. 100% of your focus goes to that focal point. This is where eloquence comes from. This is where influence comes from. This is executive presence, to be so lined up behind the stance that you are choosing that there is now no resources channeled in an inefficient way. Like, what do they think? Oh my gosh, because that's the opposite of confidence. So boom, it's choosing that focal point. So for me, going back to the original question, how do I think about focus? It's this. So in most of my moments, I'm constantly choosing what I'm standing for. When I'm arguing with my husband, I have to be honest. You know what? I'd like to think I'm standing for harmony, but really I'm standing for winning. Right? In parenting, oh, I'd like to think that I'm standing for connection, but I'm really standing for principle right now. Shit. Okay. Excuse my language. Right. And so like, it's like in our moments, it's really owning what we're standing for so that we can be truly deliberate.
Gosh, there's so much that I would love to say about all of that. Like, where do you start? That is such a powerful reminder. Oh gosh, I'm thinking about so many different directions right now. One of the things that I talk about when we're faced with a situation where we feel it's either awkward or there's something where we know that things aren't in harmony, I always tell people to think about these two questions: what's needed here and what's required of me. And I find that really helpful to take a step back. And what I want to add, with your permission and your name,
Yeah.
is about the stance, because it's such a good question. What are you
Yeah.
standing for? And
Standing for.
there's a book there. I'm not sure if you've heard of this. When I worked as a leadership coach at the Gap in their corporate office, there was a book that we used to use in our trainings called The Knowing Doing Gap. And it's no pun intended, or I guess it was intended, but it was written by these two researchers named Pfeffer and Sutton out of Stanford. And one of the biggest ahas from that, which reminds me of what you're talking about, is that in their research, they found that above all else, human beings are committed to these three things: looking good, being right, and being in control.
And being in control.
And I think so, looking good, being right, being in control. And it makes me think about just what you said. What are you standing for? And if you're standing for looking good or being in control or being right, that is probably not going to serve the situation.
When you spin out, that's exactly right. It's when we're ineffective. It's when we have nervousness. That's exactly right. And you know, because of that, and I would, so in the research that I have done, I would say that's absolutely true. And what I focus on in my book is that I am certain that this all stems from a primal, very biological fear of rejection. Because what's going on in the brain is we are hardwired to be social beings. But like, what does that really mean? Well, what we don't often talk about is that rejection literally registers as physical pain in the brain. You know, when you look at what it means to be a human, when we're born, we are born entirely dependent on our caregiver for the first couple of years of life. So the brain knows, in order to survive, I need buy-in and acceptance and approval. So what does that mean? What's death? Death is rejection. So that wiring is so intrinsic in us that we're doing everything we can to avoid rejection. And so that very primal need dictates a lot of that need to look good, a lot of that need to be right, to be in control. Because if you've got that, then you can kind of ensure your survival, right? And so,
yeah. That's really at I love that, because it's that deeper level that really, you know, if we think about, well, what is the opposite, where we feel accepted. And I can remember when I was a young person, I don't remember when, but I remember as anyway, somebody saying, always look at people and imagine that they have a sign over their head that says, make me feel important.
Yeah.
And I love that, because it also helps me to have more compassion when I'm irritated with someone.
Totally. Totally. Oh my gosh. I mean, it is, you know, So I teach, I'm so involved in the field of conversational intelligence, which is the neuroscience of trust. And I'm so invested and passionate about this because it's the neuroscience of everything we're talking about right here. And, when you get that every single person on a neurobiological level is constantly asking three questions: am I safe? Do I belong? And am I being seen? Like, it's like, oh my gosh, because that's life to my brain. Anytime any three of these toggles to know, that's when we get triggered. I'm not safe, I don't belong, or I'm not being seen. Right? It's like when you get that each person walking around it is on a neurobiological, like constantly assessing. It just, you have nothing but compassion. It
Yeah.
just gives you so
I,
much empathy. It's like, right,
I
right.
love how you boiled it down to those three things. So
Yeah.
it's so powerful. Oh my gosh. Well, what else do you want to tell us about your book before we start wrapping up here?
Yeah. Well, thanks for asking. I'm just so excited about this book. I know you've written a book and it's like, so, the process, it's just such a big deal to just translate the work that, works with people live, to be able to translate the thought from a thinking realm to a speaking realm to actually a written realm for all audiences for all time. I mean, it's a big feat, but the feedback so far is that, it's working, and it's an Amazon bestseller, which is great. And in fact, Sherry Salata, check this out. So she is the ex-executive producer for Oprah for 20 years. She got a hold of my book and she was like, oh my gosh, Amy, this is the real deal. This actually works. Like, this is amazing. So she has since introduced it to her global community. It's now a
Oh,
chosen book club choice after Deepak Chopra's book. So she highlights Deepak Chopra. He comes and he talks to her group. She just highlighted mine, like, and I share this because,
gosh,
she's like, I've read a lot of books. This works. And I'm like, I'm so glad that the
that's
translation came through. It does. It works.
Amy. I'm so happy for you.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. I'm stoked. And so what I'll say is that, it's been over 10 years of a collection of research and conversations and insights and my own personal story to really create a roadmap to break free from all that stuff we're doing that holds us back. We don't even know it,
Yeah.
and it's simple, it's practical, it's easy, and it works. It's perceptual shifts. It's not big effortful changes you have to make at the action level. It's
Mhm.
perceptual shifts you make at the perception level. Yeah.
Yeah, that's amazing. Well, is there anything that I haven't asked you yet that you want me to ask?
Oh, goodness. I think we're good. I
Okay.
say, yeah, I would say, like, I want to ask you about your book, but like, let's talk
Well,
about your book.
what I would say is exactly what you said really culminated how you synthesized how I felt about it. Because for me, I didn't, probably like you, I didn't have a shortage of content. I would sit, most of my book was written from the passenger seat of my car because I lived in such a small apartment in San Francisco. And I said, I cannot live in this place. I have to get out of here and focus. And so I remember sometimes just sitting there going, okay, this is exhausting, but I got to do this.
Yeah.
And yeah, just that whole idea of putting all of my career into a book.
Yeah.
It's
It's
daunting to sometimes sit down, like there's so much to be said here, and oh, this is going to take hours, and obviously it does, but and then to translate it into a way that's meaningful and practical, and that's the feedback I've been getting as well, which has been really wonderful.
oh
So
my gosh. Well,
anyway,
we
yeah,
must celebrate. We
exciting.
have to
I
celebrate.
know that's a good reminder for everybody listening to celebrate your wins.
That's
And
right.
yeah, just live on purpose, just like Amy
That's
says. So,
Amy.
Amy, where can we find you?
Yeah. So you can find me at my website, alwaysonpurpose.com. So lots of stuff there about, all the things that I'm up to and videos and whatnot. I'm on LinkedIn, Amy Elisa Wong. That's about it for social media. That's the only thing that I enjoy and have time for.
Okay.
And otherwise, my book, though, Living on Purpose, 5 Deliberate Choices to Realize Fulfillment and Joy, Easiest place is probably Amazon. It's at
Okay.
Barnes and Noble, and it's really available where all books are sold. But I'd say just go to Amazon. Easy.
Fabulous. Amy, thank you so
Yeah.
much for being here.
Thank you so much. It's been a pleasure.
And that's a wrap of another episode of Ignite Your Confidence. I'm your host, Karen Laus. Thank you so much for listening. If you loved today's episode, please subscribe and leave a review. It helps other people find the podcast faster, and it certainly helps me. If you're interested in more tips and tools around confidence, please join me over in my Facebook group called Ignite Your Confidence with Karen Laus. Remember, you too can stand out with unshakable confidence.